Saturday. I love driving in New Orleans, especially the French Quarter. Narrow streets with more twists than a roller coaster, buildings older than most states, and the smell, the best bread baked anywhere in the South. A city featured in so many ghost hunting blogs that it once held the reputation of being the most haunted city in America, if not the continent. New Orleans had been my mailing address once. The heat wasn't gone. This was New Orleans. Heat never really left. It just got bored and wandered off for a few months. The October air sat somewhere in the low 80s, humid enough to remind me where I was, but cool enough that nobody complained about it. But I hadn't driven on these roads in years, 4.5 to be exact. My name is Remy Boudreau. I'm 29 and work as an infrastructure engineer. It's a fancy title for a guy who installs, upgrades, and maintains networks, not office networks, with a handful of computers. The systems I worked on spanned cities, sometimes continents, with tens of thousands of machines quietly keeping the modern world running. Canal Street hadn't changed. None of them had. They still smelled of car exhaust and cigarettes, with the nearby scent of the ocean underlying it all. But everything had changed. My boss at Micro Universal had timed it perfectly. By accident, the city was gearing up for its fall music festival. New Orleans, NOLA, the Big Easy, the birthplace of jazz, the Mardi Gras capital of the world, the city that care forgot. And no matter how far away I'd gone, it was always home. I had 2 reasons for being here. Work was the easier one. I was here to install a new server rack and integrate it into the network for Micro Universal. Most people had never heard of the company. That was the nature of infrastructure work. If everything went right, nobody noticed. But companies like Netflix, Amazon, and YouTube relied on providers like Micro Universal to keep their data flowing. The second reason was infinitely harder. Last time I saw Gerard had been ugly. The breakup was short, brutal, and he would never forgive me. But I'm going anyway. 7 years ago, I'd been fresh from college, met Gerard, and life was an adventure. He was 29 to my 22. For the 2 years I lived with him, life was a constant party. We were regulars on the club scene. We shared an apartment, and, at least on his side, something deeper. For me, it was a romp through the playground. Like an idiot, I didn't realize what I had until long after the expiry date. About 4.5 years ago, I'd been offered Chicago, a huge pay raise, moving expenses, and stock options. Compared to what I was earning before, it was a fortune. I had already given notice and ordered professional movers before I told Gerard anything. His life was here. His family was here. I made the biggest mistake of my life. I was so afraid of telling my lover that I kept waiting for the right time. I never told him. About a month after I accepted, Gerard saw a text preview on my phone, congratulating me on the new job. That was the start of the biggest fight I've ever had. The relationship died that night. We never spoke again, except about bills. I was furious. He was furious. Gerard's brother moved in after I left. My ex was hurt in a bad, broken kind of way. I didn't understand until recently. I've never forgiven myself. I guess I need closure, or absolution, or maybe let him beat the crap out of me. My first 2 years in Chicago, I thought I was living the dream. Steady paycheck, nightlife every weekend, cruised through 2 serious relationships. Like all dreams, reality hit like a cement truck. The relationships were as shallow as rain puddles, and half as lasting. The job required a lot of travel, and most weeks I topped out at 60 hours, not including flight time. The overtime was nice, but I never found a place or a person to call home. Who wants a person who can never be there for you? Work means everything, until it doesn't. All it's been is one-night stands with guys whose last names I don't remember. Not since Gerard. Not since I ruined everything. And now I'm back. Nothing had changed, but I had changed. I waited at a stoplight and looked in the mirror. I wasn't as young as I was. 29, fine wrinkles around the eyes, the random gray hair, a grim set to the mouth. Where was the man who laughed, who partied, who wanted adventure? And the worst sin of all? I had back hair. Ironic, I was now as old as Gerard was when I met him. I was becoming domestic. My last partner had complained. He needed someone to make him feel alive, keep the blood pumping, keep the testosterone high, and the adrenaline higher. The grass is not greener on the other side. Sometimes it's just painted. I hadn't been afraid in a long time, but now I was terrified. My stomach tightened, my heart shriveled. Should I call him first? Text him? I double-checked the map app. Turn on Burgundy Street, go half a mile, turn right into the Somerset Apartments, Building 740, Unit 308. Of all the stupid ideas I've ever had, this ranked right up there with snorting a peanut up my nose and getting it stuck. The ER staff laughed. My parents laughed hysterically. Frat hazing had been embarrassing and humiliating. Can't believe I volunteered for it. So why was I doing this? I parked my Nissan Altima at the foot of the 5-story red brick building and stared at the steps. Nestled deep in the fear was a glimmer of hope. Maybe it wouldn't be as bad as I'm imagining. Maybe we could get a coffee. Maybe just catch up. I found his old door on the 4th floor, 2 units from the elevator. The brass fleur-de-lis was still there. I'd bought it at a street market for $10 and insisted it would look classy. Gerard had left for 10 straight minutes. 4 years later, it was still hanging on the door, dusty, tarnished, a dirt halo around the edges. But Gerard had never taken it down. The fear returned. He had moved on with his life. This would only be a reopening of old wounds. Hand trembling, gut churning. I rang the doorbell. Maybe success had dragged him out of our old apartment. Chapter 2. A woman answered, college-aged, dark hair pulled into a messy tail, and glasses. She eyed me up, then down, then rolled her eyes. Esteban, one of your friends? I didn't recognize her. Obviously, she didn't recognize me. Who the hell is Esteban? Which meant one of two things. Gerard had moved, or I'd just driven 1,000 miles to embarrass myself. Or maybe both. I had made a huge mistake. I swallowed, glanced past her, and finally said, Is Gerard here? Who are you? Remy Boudreau? Before she moved, the door swung open. A shirtless man stood behind her, a tribal emblem tattooed around his left shoulder. Latino, dark hair, jealous eyes. This the guy, Chin Chin? Don't know him. What's your business, amigo? This man gives off X vibes, Chin Chin said. At least it wasn't Gerard standing there. Is he here? It's important. So, Remy's your name, right? Chin Chin said. Let me guess. You want Gerard back? Wait, you're that, Remy? Dumped Gerard more than 4 years ago? And you came back? Out with it, Esteban said. I was stupid, I began. Oh, God, the girl said. He's going to tell us his sob story. We've already heard it. Esteban folded his arms. Gerard's not here. Most days he never leaves the bar. Why? Man was right, the girl said. He really is stupid. On the wall opposite the door hung a painting of white calla lilies Gerard had made in some college elective more than 20 years ago. Proof that Gerard still lived here. Can you tell me which bar? Donovan's. Esteban yawned, already turning away from the conversation. If it'll get you out of here, Chen Jin said, I'll even give you the address. Okay. Burgundy Street, guapo, Chen Chen replied, slowly closing the door. Next to the laundromat. But if you find the 7-Eleven, you've gone too far. Word of advice, leave him alone. Why? I asked. Man doesn't need an X on top of everything else. Esteban shut the door before I could ask anything else. Chapter 3. Donovan's bar was a single-level building that must have been built 80 years ago. Flat roof, a cantankerous swamp cooler that roared like a T-Rex with breath like an ashtray. Neon signs in the windows advertised Coors, Miller Lite, Bud, and Corona, with a large one above the door flickering Donovan in fluorescent green. Freshly painted brown, it had a bright red door. The fear had transformed into anxiety. My hands sweated, my hair felt greasy, my shoes scrunched on the gravel. Whatever gods are listening, wish me luck. I pushed open the door. Cool air greeted me, along with the sense of pine sol and barbecued chicken wings. A TV over the bar blared college football, North Carolina versus Virginia. Third quarter from what I could see. A couple of guys sat at the bar mindlessly eating pretzels, sipping beer, and talking smack about both teams. Underneath the TV stood a garden gnome holding a can of beer. A couple of older women sat in a booth, sipping margaritas. A man sat at a table alone, nursing a jack and nibbling through a basket of chicken with a bottle of Slap Yo Mama hot sauce nearby. A black beaded curtain separated the bar from the kitchen. Couldn't see Gerard. I took a seat at the bar, grabbing a handful of pretzels. A woman pushed out from the beaded curtain. She was about 30, wore a green baseball jersey with the number 36 in bold white across the back. Don't forget to order more Miller. Don't know why, but that's all everybody wanted to drink. A familiar voice responded. According to the schedule, they can bring it Thursday. Anything else? I spoke before I could stop myself. How about some Don Julio Blanco? Life's better with the worm. That was our old joke. Why had I said it? The noise of the game, the clacking of the beaded curtain, the odd stare from the bartender. The world held its breath. Then Gerard walked through the curtain. I couldn't read his face. His jaw tightened. A muscle twitched on his left temple. He held a rag in one hand, a pencil behind his ear. His hair, though dark, showed a little silver. Creases had evolved around his eyes and lips. Still lean, still pale gray eyes that reflected the ocean. His mouth twitched into a sardonic smile. My God, Remy, still telling that joke? Everyone knows real tequila doesn't have any bugs in it. I'm a slow learner. You know him? The bartender asked. Know him, Gerard chuckled. I slept with the son of a witch for 2 years. Worst fight I ever had was the last time I saw his sorry butt. It's been what, 4 years? A little more. I'll take a Blanco for old time's sake, I replied. My shoulders had bunched up and refused to relax. And it's been exactly 4 years, 4 months, and 27 days. Mine like a spreadsheet, Gerard said, his voice hinting at a growl. One of the things I hated about you. Get him a Blanco, on the rocks, Madam President. Me one as well, on the house. President, I asked. My initials are LJB, Latrice Jackson Brown, like the president, she said. opening the fridge under the bar. "What do I call you?" "I answer to anything, sugar, especially tips." Once she had poured 2 glasses of tequila over ice, she drifted away to give us a little privacy. "I never expected to see you again," Gerard said, breaking the stiffness between us. The tang of the tequila burned as it went down. My shoulders began to soften. I didn't know what to say to that. The wound, though 4 years old, flared as if the fight had happened yesterday. Instead, I shifted topics. "Met Esteban and Chin Chin. What's their story?" He humphed. "Jealous much?" "Terribly," I replied. "Seriously, you into threesomes?" He sipped his tequila, then stared at the ice cubes as if they could tell the future. "After I bought this place, I had less cash than I figured. Needed roommates." Guilt crept into my stomach. My hand curled around the cool glass. My fingers twiddled a pretzel. I didn't know. "How could you? Running out like that? We didn't speak for years." I heard the anger just under the edge. From his angle, he didn't see the opportunity, the career, the money. Gerard saw the disaster. I had broken his heart. I ate the pretzel and picked up another. I didn't come to fight. "Then why are you here?" The ice cubes settled in my glass, a soft clink. I sipped more because I needed something to do than anything else. Words stopped. I finally looked deep into my glass and said, "I don't know." He sighed and stared at me as if my thoughts were written across my forehead. "Chicago isn't what you thought?" I raised my eyebrows and met his eyes. "That obvious?" "You don't share a bed with someone without learning a few things." "It doesn't feel like home." The words blurted out before I even knew what I had said. He nodded. "Do you want to come back?" The thought made my stomach clench. I didn't know if he meant to New Orleans or to him. Some conversations take courage, and your boy's not ready. I changed the subject. "Managing a bar now?" Gerard studied me for a second longer, sipped his tequila, then looked away. "You're looking at the owner. Almost 2 years back, I traded in my retirement for this place. Only one problem." "What's that?" He opened his phone, scrolled through his email, and then slid it over to me. The screen showed a vendor invoice for Jose Cuervo. "Looks pretty standard. What's the problem?" He gave me a grim chuckle. "Own a bar, you'll make money, you'll make friends, maybe they'll make a TV show about you. What they don't tell you is how to speak business. It might as well be Russian for all I understand. And numbers, don't get me started." I didn't get the chance to ask more. "Gerard," LJ walked towards us, wiping the counter as she drew closer. She nodded toward the other end of the bar, where a woman in a navy blue business suit sat, a briefcase on the counter beside her. She sipped water. "Some lady says she's from Interstate Shipping. Says you need to talk to her, and you need to do it right now. Otherwise, she isn't responsible for what happens next." As Gerard walked away, I thought about his question. If he asked, would I come back to him, even if it meant leaving Chicago? Chapter 5. Gerard spent several minutes talking to the woman. His voice raised once. The woman opened her briefcase. I took another sip of my tequila, enjoying the coolness. New Orleans is always hot and always humid. Step outside and need a shower within minutes. I sent a text to the company shipping the new servers. Though it was Saturday, they would be arriving in 30 minutes. Whatever Gerard was dealing with, it would take longer than 30 minutes. I didn't have to go to work, at least not until later today. Staying here was hard. Seeing my ex was harder. Gerard had moved on. What was I expecting? Him to stay holed up in his apartment mooning over me? Call me Captain Entitled, I'd grown up. He'd grown up. Life, like a river, keeps on flowing. For everyone. I flagged LJ down. You have a pen? Deja vu struck. This was how Gerard and I first met. A phone number on a napkin. Except it was over catfish po' boys and not drinks. Disappointment prickled inside me. I stretched my shoulders and drained the tequila. Screaming at me would have been better than this. Maybe I am entitled. Probably am for expecting any kind of reaction. Besides, no reaction. I wrote a quick note. If you want to catch up over dinner, how does Hook's Seafood and Po' Boys sound? Tomorrow night, if you don't want to come, I'll understand. And added my phone number. I drew 3 hearts next to it. I gave it to LJ. Sorry, looks like Gerard will be a while. She took my empty glass before taking the napkin. She read it and then tucked it into a pocket. He has money troubles? I asked. She seemed about to keep her mouth shut, but thought better. Vendor troubles, which is causing money troubles. Gerard can't balance a budget if his grandma's life depended on it. Gerard? Money? I waved as I walked out the door. He's deathly allergic to budgets. As I was driving to Micro Universal, I received a text from the local manager. Delivery is almost here. Where are you? I sent him an almost there, set my GPS, and drove. 20 minutes later, I reached the giant white box that was our local hub and data storage center. A building big enough to land the space shuttle in, with room for a Chicago-sized coffee shop. The truck carrying the servers and other gear arrived at about the same time I did. Normally, we'd wear business casual, but not today. We had to assemble the server racks and lay connections before we could even bring in the servers. The old servers were in the hall, their backs covered in dust. I met the team, spent an hour going over plans, and then latched on a tool belt and got to work. The server room was a cavern the size of my gym back home. We weren't replacing all of them, only a row of 7. Replacing them was the easy job. Actually making sure everything synced and coordinated with the older equipment took longer. Corporate had given me a week for that part. The room had an elevated floor, was kept at a permanent 62 degrees, and hummed, not like bees, more like the loud, constant sigh of a dozen refrigerators lined in a row. It smelled of ozone and electricity coursing through wires, a distinctive scent like a television being on for 6 hours. It took us the rest of the day to prepare the actual site. I'd come back tomorrow for the install. 8 p.m., we called it good. I had kept my phone off while we worked. When they pay you this kind of money, ringing phones are a nuisance. Covered in dust, grease, and something I couldn't identify, I shuffled off to my car and turned my phone back on. The usual messages, but one wasn't. Gerard had texted, "Sorry, I couldn't talk. How about dinner tonight?" My stomach shriveled, maybe my liver too. Should I feel excited, anxious, scared? The feeling from walking into the bar came back, just as strong, just as tense. I ran my fingers through my hair and double-checked the time. He'd texted about 3. I sent back, "Just finished. Need to find a motel and get changed. 9 too late?" His reply came back 2 minutes later. "Swing by the bar first." Chapter 6. Like any Saturday, Donovan's was packed. Cars and trucks filled every parking stall. More cars lined the surrounding streets. 6 motorcycles leaned on their stands just before the main door. Honky-tonk played through the open door, as did the cheers of a soccer game. I found a place on the street to park, locked my car, and stepped inside. Standing room only. I've been in quieter baseball games. Men and women racked up balls on 4 pool tables. 2 couples were attempting to dance. 5 bartenders worked the drinks, including Gerard and LJ. I wove through the crowd. A bar stool opened up. As soon as I sat down, I waved at LJ. "Long time, stranger," she said. "What'll you have? Tequila Blanco on the rocks again?" "Heineken, chilled, and tell Gerard I'm here." "He's been waiting for you. He's desperate, but not in that way. Well, maybe that way too, but he's got other things troubling him besides your pretty head." "Like?" "Business." LJ found a bottle in the under-the-counter fridge, popped the top off, and brought me a tall glass mug. "I'll let Gerard know you're here." I poured my brew, ice cold and yeasty, turned around and watched the crowd. Crowds are the same wherever you are. A table of 20-somethings were celebrating, couldn't tell what. Another table had women all admiring a diamond ring. A third had men slapping down cards and sipping beer. Normal. 20 minutes later, Gerard leaned on the other side of the bar. "Get you another?" My heart lurched. I met his eyes and suddenly forgot everything I had planned to say. Gerard was still as ruggedly handsome as he'd been when I first knew him. More gray hair, but also quietly composed, as if he'd seen the worst of what the world had to offer, and was unimpressed. A guilty pang bit deep. I was part of that worst. "Sure," I said. "Maybe if you have a moment, some conversation?" He retrieved 2 Heinekens, popped the tops, and handed me one. He walked around the bar and took the seat next to me. Neither one of us knew what to say. Then I said, "So how have you been?" At the same time, he said, "How's life been treating you?" We both smiled. Then I asked, "Seeing anyone?" And Gerard asked at the same time, "Anyone special?" I had missed this. Gerard raised his glass. "To bad memories." We clinked our bottles together, and I asked, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I had stayed?" A bead of condensation slowly slunk down the side of his bottle and made a small drip on the table. "Almost every day." I waited for him to say more, but when none came, I added, "Sometimes I think I made a mistake, leaving New Orleans, leaving you." "You did." Gerard's gruffness startled me. "I'm sorry." "Are you? I was planning on proposing. Everyone said that was a mistake. I mean, buying the ring and all, but I didn't listen." The words knocked the air out of me. I clenched my fist. "You bought a ring?" My words were hesitant, my voice going dry. Gerard nodded. I suddenly couldn't look at him. The couple nearest us whooped, and he swung his girl around. Gerard tapped his fingers on the table and leaned forward. "Is work still your focus?" "It pays the bills." Gerard nodded. "You still good with numbers and such?" I relaxed. This was a safer topic, I hope. "You used to call my budgeting stuff stupid, and it made you angry." A smile cracked his face, then faded as fast as it appeared. "Can you look over some numbers for me? Something screwed up. I suspect it was me, but I need another set of eyes." It almost felt like the last few years hadn't happened, except Gerard's leg kept bouncing under the table, and my back was so tense I'd probably have a backache tomorrow morning. I took another sip of beer, praying I could relax and not make a fool of myself. "Tell me about it." His steely eyes looked at his beer. "More money is going out than expected." I sipped my beer and leaned forward. "New businesses always lose money," he said. "Higher overhead than planned, rent never stays the same, and the recent mess with electricity meant higher maintenance fees, which they passed on to us. Of course." "Of course." "You're about to say but." He nodded. "But it's a lot more than expected. I can't pay you." I smiled. "Of course you can't. And here comes the other butt. Gerard reached across the table and held my hand. You can stay with me, just like old times. Well, the good times. I thought you had a roommate. His eyes took on that sad, puppy look, but when he spoke, it came out rough. Roommate, not love mate. Esteban and Chin Chin have the guest room. You can have the couch. Or I can. I can't believe I answered with a voice equal to his gruffness. We're both adults. You take the left side of the bathroom counter. I'll take the right. Gerard's eyebrows shot up. He scratched the top of his head as if the train came early, and he missed it. Just to be clear, Gerard said, his voice stiff, I'm still angry at you for leaving, for not telling me anything, for just being a jerk about the whole thing. But I'm also glad you're back. Chapter 7. About 1, Gerard led me inside his place. It hadn't changed. 1,100 square feet, master bedroom, 2 baths, kitchen, and a combo living room/dining room. Esteban and Chin Chin were out. A garden gnome identical to the one in the bar stood on the coffee table, gleefully holding his can of beer. Don't mind the mess, Gerard quipped. Maid walked out. What, you didn't pay her enough? I lugged my suitcase to a corner, kicked the old clothes out of the way, and landed it. You sure about this? I mean, me staying here? Gerard gave me the stare. Shut up and get into bed. I'm tired and don't care if you stink. Got other things to worry about. I removed my shirt as he kicked off his shoes. Like what? Sometimes I want to cut my losses and run. He slid his pants off and sat on the bed. The tattoo of a compass rose peeked from beneath Gerard's t-shirt as he sat on the edge of the mattress. The room smelled of Old Spice deodorant and dirty socks and peppermint candies. Nothing had changed, except the gnome. I blinked. That's new. He glanced it down. Midlife crisis. You are 36. Early midlife crisis. That's just regular bad decision-making. Which is why I own a bar. Despite everything, I laughed. The sound surprised both of us. The years folded in on themselves. We were back in our old apartment, arguing about whose turn it was to buy groceries and whether replacing every meal with takeout counted as a nutritional strategy. Then reality returned. Why the garden gnomes? I asked. Gerard shrugged. Bad life choices. Chin Chin threatened to post a no nomies sign because they creep her out and don't pay rent. Gerard rubbed a hand across his face. Look, he said, I'm serious about the money thing. I know. No jokes. He let out a long breath. The bar should be doing better than it is. How much worse? I asked. He stood and crossed the room toward a battered desk shoved against the wall. Bad enough, I noticed. That's your financial metric. I stretched and yawned. It has worked for 40 years. Gerard, you're 36. Exactly, 40 years. I groaned. He opened a drawer and pulled out a thick manila folder. At least a dozen more were inside. Invoices, receipts, handwritten notes, bank statements, bills. The organizational system appeared to be based entirely on garden gnome mating rituals. In other words, I had no idea. You keep all this in one folder? I asked. Several folders. They all look the same. That improves efficiency. I stared at him. He stared back. I'm beginning to understand the problem, I replied. See, you're already helping, he smiled. I sat beside him on the bed and started sorting papers into piles. Alcohol vendors, food suppliers, utilities, payroll, random receipts, paid bills, unpaid bills. That one was thick. and even more random receipts. A shocking number of random receipts. I turned and stared at my old lover. Why do you have a receipt for $300 worth of garden gnomes? How many is that? Gerard looked away. 30? I didn't count. He scratched behind one ear. Gerard, there was a promotion with garden gnomes. They held little cans of beer. Gerard, the distributor said they were collectible. Please, tell me you didn't buy collectible garden gnomes for a bar. They came with free tequila glasses? Oh, God. Look, they held little cans of beer, Gerard repeated. That's got to be worth something, right? I closed my eyes, took a deep breath to still my mind, and muttered, Lord, give me strength. That's exactly what my accountant said. You have an accountant? Had? That got my attention. Had? He quit? Why? Gerard pointed at the gnome receipt. That's fair. For nearly an hour I sorted papers while Gerard answered questions. Outside, faint traffic drifted through an open window. The apartment hummed quietly. No music, no television, just the rustle of paper. And every so often, Gerard looking at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. Around 2:30 in the morning, I found it. Wait. Gerard sat upright. What? I spread several invoices across the blanket. These shipping charges. What about them? They don't make sense. He leaned closer. The familiar scent of soap and wood smoke lingered around him. My pulse betrayed him. I ignored it and pointed at the paperwork. Here, interstate shipping. The lady from today? Yeah. Problem? Maybe. I tapped 3 separate invoices. See these amounts? He squinted. No. Of course you don't. That's why you're here. The charges increase every month, but the deliveries don't, I explained. His eyes narrowed. What does that mean? It means you're paying for something, I said. What? I flipped through another stack, papers crinkling and shuffling. Some had coffee stains. Others were folded like they had lived in a pocket for a week. Then I dove into the second folder. There were a dozen or more folders total, one for each month. Who knew what the others contained? This might take a while. I found a matching receipt from July in the October folder. The invoice it belonged to contained different numbers. My mind went into spreadsheet mode. I shuffled through receipts until I found the one dated a month ago, then cataloged it with the shipping invoice with the same date. They should match, but didn't. Esteban and Chin Chin entered through the main door, whispering and acting quiet. Good thing the bedroom door was closed. Gerard's up late again, Chin Chin whispered. Feel bad for him, but what can we do? We both make just barely above minimum, Esteban said, just before the door to their bedroom closed. Quickly, I spread pages over the bed while Gerard brushed his teeth. God, can you believe this? I'm only wearing boxer briefs and socks while hovering around my ex's bed playing forensic accountant. Not how I envisioned this week. I chuckled as I lined up other invoices with receipts. The pattern became undeniable and had happened 3 times. My heart ached for my old lover. We had parted with bad blood, but Gerard had tried so hard to build something. He didn't deserve this. Gerard, come here. I found something you're not going to like. His voice became cautious. What? I think somebody's billing your business for products you're not receiving. The room went silent. For the first time all evening, The worried lines returned to his face. "How much?" he asked. I did the math in my head, then wished I hadn't. I became sad and took his hand, hoping the simple touch would comfort him. "Enough that it's a problem." He squeezed my hand back. "How big a problem?" I slowly met his eyes. "Big enough that it might explain where your missing money went." Gerard stared at the papers, then at me, then back at the papers. Finally, a humorless laugh escaped him. 4.5 years. "What?" I asked. "You disappear." He shook his head. "And within 1 hour you found something. You always did save my ass." I wasn't prepared for the gratitude in his voice, or the way it made my chest ache. The old feelings were still there, only needed a gentle prodding to stand at attention. I quickly let go of his hand and gathered the relevant documents in one pile, the rest in another. Tomorrow, when we both were awake, we could sift through the full mess. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Then Gerard quietly said, "I'm glad you came back, Remy." And for the first time since arriving in New Orleans, I let myself hope. We climbed into bed and turned the lights out. "Remy?" "Yeah?" "Don't confuse helping my business with fixing what happened between us." Within minutes, the lusty sounds of Gerard's snores filled the night. Oddly, I missed them. I turned away and drifted away, dreaming about server racks and Don Julio Blanco tequila on the rocks. Chapter 8. My phone woke us. Sometime during the night, I had cuddled into Gerard, letting his warmth relax me like distance never could. His right arm held me close. My body remembered what my brain forgot. I checked my text and groaned. "What time do you want to get started?" Was never an option. Gerard's alarm clock read 8:30 in bright red letters. "Work always calls at the worst times," he groaned. I dressed, found the coffee maker, and set it for 12 cups. As it dripped, Esteban walked out. "You living here now?" "For now," I said, pouring him a cup of coffee. I made one for Gerard, adding 1 teaspoon of sugar and just a little bit of horchata. Esteban poured a cup for Chin Chin, while I took mine with a little vanilla creamer. "Why's she called Chin Chin?" I asked. "Her regular name is Chanel," Esteban said, "but when she was a kid, everybody called her Chin Chin. It stuck." "She doesn't like me much." Esteban scratched his double chin. "She's just protective of her friends." I checked my phone. "Tell her I said hi. Time to go to work." "On a Sunday?" "No rest for the wicked." It took all day to install the servers and connect them to the network. It was routine work that I had done for years. It left me time to think about Gerard, not about rekindling romance with my ex, but about the problems with his bar. Replacing servers was easy. Broken hardware told you what was wrong. People rarely did. I'm a great example of what not to do. We finished the installation, including the connections, by 4 in the afternoon. The rest of the week will be software integration and hours of debugging. But tonight, life belonged to Gerard. I spent hours with my ex, but he didn't feel like an ex anymore. We organized files, receipts, and invoices. We spoke, at first about nothing, then about Chicago and the bar. About 10, we spoke about us, about what happened 4.5 years ago. For the next 2 hours, we untangled his finances. It was complex, but not complicated. About midnight, eyes bleary from too much coffee and too much reading and way too much conversation, I took his hand and said, I was a selfish idiot who let money get into my head. It sounds so stupid now. I'm sorry. I never should have left you. I learned what was important, and it was you. Gerard's eyes glistened. Yep, you were an idiot. I laughed, despite myself. I know. You hurt me, Remy. His voice roughened. Not because you took the job. Hell, I was proud of you. I always knew you were going somewhere. I swallowed. You hurt me because you didn't trust me enough to tell me. A slap would have hurt less. I turned away, unable to meet his eyes. Guilt sank deep in my gut. I know, I said. My voice trembled almost as bad as my hands. Gerard squeezed my hand, his touch warm and rugged. For a long time, I wanted to hate you, made things simpler. He glanced around the apartment, at the invoices spread across the table, at the garden gnome holding its tiny beer can, then back at me. Problem is, I never stopped loving you. My breath caught. Something softened in my shoulders, in my heart, and something caught in my throat. I tried to speak, but no words came out. 4.5 years. 4.5 years of airports, hotel rooms, overtime, and strangers whose faces blurred together. 4.5 years wishing I could undo one conversation. I never stopped loving you either, I admitted. Gerard stared at me for a moment, then pulled me into a kiss. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't desperate. It felt like coming home. The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee and Esteban loudly yelling, God, who stole my burritos? Chin Chin leaned out of their room, eating a bowl of cereal. Don't be a Bob. You did. There's pieces of tortilla in the bed. Gerard laughed. That wasn't me. The sound drifted down the hallway and settled somewhere deep inside my chest. My phone buzzed with messages about server integration and project timelines. Interstate shipping would be hearing from Gerard's attorney. The bar still needed work. So did Gerard and I. For the first time in years, neither problem seemed impossible. I wrapped an arm around his waist as he stood at the counter, balancing invoices and drinking coffee. He leaned into me without looking away from the paperwork. You staying long? I looked around the apartment, the old painting, the ridiculous garden gnomes and their cans of beer. The man I should never have left. I think, I said, kissing his temple. Somebody's got to do the math for you. Might as well be me. The garden gnome seemed to approve because he toasted us with his little can of beer. The end. Bentley's note. This story is not an advertisement for garden gnomes. Any resemblance between the author's spending habits and Gerard's poor financial decisions is purely coincidental. Besides, Geo won't let me have any. There was an incident. I thought it was a fire hydrant, so it's not my fault. I'll see you next time, everybody. I appreciate you stopping by. This is me and Bentley signing off. Peace, my friends. I love you all.